Hi guys, thanks for catching the replay of this Writerly Wednesday chat. You can catch me live on Periscope Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Hi April. Hi Audra. Hello Martina. Hi Dawn. Hi Kat. Thanks for joining me. Cool. I'm glad to see you all. It is getting warm up here in NorCal. Dennis, I don't believe that I have seen you here before, Dennis. Nice to meet you. If you are new, welcome to my Periscope. Yeah, you are. I love purple. Purple's a good color. Yeah, so wow, we got a good crowd right off the bat. I'll just start in on it. So feel free to introduce yourself in the comments if you are new. I like to get to know everybody. Jace is here! That's funny. Lime green jelly. Great. So I am Megan. I'm a developmental editor and aspiring writing coach, and I like to join you all on Wednesdays to talk about writing stuff. That was real descriptive. It's been kind of a long week. I just got back from AWP and I am still recovering and also still thinking about all the awesome stuff that I learned. So that's why this scope is sort of an expansion of one of the panels. Did I recover my spoons? Did I lose my spoons? I didn't get the... Humor is going right over my head for the last couple days. Caught them on catch. But I always feel silly when I'm like, I don't know spoon theory. I always feel silly when I'm like, you can catch these on catch. But I think that's the point. Cool. Sounds good. Who am I? I am Megan. I'm an editor. I think I already said that. So yeah, today we are talking about writing diverse characters, how to research them, and a little bit about why it's important, because I've been thinking about this panel since I went to it and the tips and advice that they gave, and I tried to do a little bit more searching around for some resources for you guys. So let's just hop right in there. So the first thing that they recommended that you start with that I really love, and I'm going to, I think, start using at the beginning of every new project that I start, is to think about these 3 questions. So the first one is, what social identities do I occupy and how do those affect what I value and maybe undervalue in my writing? So for me, I am a straight, white, cisgender female in America. So what does that mean for me? What kinds of biases does that come with? What sorts of privilege does that come with? And how might that be showing itself in my writing and my characters? Second question, am I the best person to be telling this story? What does cisgender mean? Oh, so it means that your gender identity that you were sort of assigned, I guess, according to your biological sex is what feels natural to you. So it's sort of the, not opposite, but it's the companion to transgender. So it's transgender and cisgender. I hope that was not just more confusing. Cool. Excellent. So yeah, asking, am I the best person to be telling this story? And the answer might be no, and that is just going to have to be okay with you. Because if you're not going to do it justice, I has the lady bits, and I do feel like a lady most of the time. Oh, cis means same. That makes sense. Thank you for that little tidbit, Martina. You learn something new every day. So yeah, think about your social identities, how they show up in your writing, and whether or not that means that you're going to do the story justice. I love that song, Jace. Good job. Third question is, what are my intentions for developing these characters and telling these stories? So if you're doing it because diversity is in right now, like that's not a very good intention. But if you're doing it because this is a story that you feel really strongly about, this is a character that has worked its way into your heart and your soul, and you have to tell his or her story or their story, then you should be doing all of this research so that you can honor that. Me too. Thanks, guys. Oh, I don't know. I missed something. Never be sorry for singing Shania Twain in the chat on my Periscope. That is always allowed. Anyway, so then they moved on to talk about the dimensions of diverse characters. And so the first dimension is the outward manifestation of cultures, or of the culture. So this is stuff like language, music, food, maybe clothing, all of that kind of stuff. But this should be based on archetypes, not stereotypes. And so how do I know if I'm drawing on stereotypes? You say, well, I found this really great blog on Tumblr, actually, called Writing with Color. And here I'm going to show you. So this is writingwithcolor.tumblr.com. And she has this whole, it's right up here in the navigation, stereotypes and tropes navigation. And so she has this whole list of posts that she's written that's advice for writers. Yeah, I just discovered this today, Jace, and it's amazing. So she's got different posts on the various known and popular stereotypes for different ethnic groups, and this is obviously not all-inclusive. The URL is writingwithcolor.tumblr.com. I knew what you meant. I got you. And the best part is that almost all of these posts link to more resources. And so that's a really cool site that I found today that I am going to absolutely use in the future to my benefit. They do a lot of linking to tvtropes.com, and that is another website that has a ton of information on stereotypes and how they tend to play out in media. It's TV specific, but a story is a story. So I think that it would still behoove us wordsmiths to look into those things. So yeah, that is some good stuff to use right there to research the first dimension. Random trick for archetypes, tarot cards. Interesting. That does make sense, because there's like, that plays into like the idea of like the mother and the witch and that kind of thing, right? I don't know a whole lot. I want to get into tarot, actually. It is super hot in here. I'm gonna be chugging water like Marco Rubio. Don't mind me. Major Arcana has a ton of good ideas for archetypes. Is that a website? The Major Arcana? Pro tip from... No, it's not. Oh, set of cards. Interesting. I will look into that. Oh. I have to talk to my writer friends who do tarot now. Yeah, I wish I had friends who did tarot. I'll have to Google or bother you all. Second dimension of researching your diverse character is the group experience and history. So whatever group your character is a part of, you want to research their cultural experience and their cultural history. They recommended in the panel starting on the global/country level, but then working your way down to the local/state/provincial level, because geography affects your culture. It affects your experience. In the United States, there is the sort of American culture, and then there is culture that's West Coast based. There's East Coast culture, there's rural culture, there's mountain culture, like wherever you are, it affects your life experience, your worldview. Exactly, the provincial life. I want much more than it. So yeah, thinking about that kind of thing is super important. They recommended a book called Who's Your City by Richard Florida. Everyone has to make Belle their wife. She's the bomb. So yeah, Richard Florida wrote a book called Who's Your City? Close. City. And it is all about how place affects your life, basically. Affects your choices, affects your happiness. I'm fine with it. You guys can sing songs while I'm talking. I'll join you every once in a while. Yeah, so that's a good resource for learning more about how place affects people's lives and their choices and stuff. It's not about any one particular culture or anything like that, but sort of just good knowledge to have. Been on the East Coast for 17 years, still can't figure out why folks are in such a rush. I actually feel the same way about like Northern versus Southern California, with the exception of my dear Dawn. Most of the people I know from Southern California are real stressed out all the time, and I can't figure it out. And so when I moved up north, all of a sudden everything felt relaxed, and then I lived in Portland for a little while, and I was like, these people are so chill, they're barely moving. So that's my theory about the West Coast, is the farther north you go, the more relaxed everyone is. And then, you know, in Washington, they got that legalized situation. So I'm sure everyone up there is nice and relaxed. But anyway, moving on. So that's, you know, you get the idea. Hey, Oakland. I have a brother living in Oakland and a friend who lives in Berkeley, so. Was just in Seattle. Was it chill? I bet it was super chill. So yeah, you're going to want to consider how the specific location that your character is from affects their cultural experience and their worldview. Yes, Hanya is the friend in Berkeley. Whoop whoop, Bay Area. Yes, and you're going to want to find histories and literature that are written by the group that your character is a member of. Because that should be pretty obvious. When writers are writing from outside their experience, they have a tendency to impose their own experience and their own worldview onto those characters, and it's especially dangerous when the writer is white and the character is a person of color, because then you whitewash their experience, and that is extremely harmful. But I think it can happen even if the writer is another person of color, and it's never correct to impose your own experience onto your character. You want to find as much information about this person that you're creating as you possibly can. And you also want to read, just makes me want to want ads for interviews for different. Yeah. I mean, I would totally just like start a group of like people who get together to talk about, I don't know, this kind of thing, life experiences. I would be totally down for something like that. Because, I mean, it's hard to find. I live in Davis, which is not the most diverse community in the entire world. So, I mean, finding the people is going to be part of the challenge. But as far as books go, there should be someone in your local library who is an expert in, a specialist on research. And so this person should. It almost turned into should. This person should be able to direct you to the proper resources. And again, you're going to want to find works that have been authored by the type of the group that you are representing, because that's going to get you the most authentic information if you don't have access to an actual person. And so what I did was I just did a quick Google for books by African American authors. Japanese expat living in Cali. Yeah, that's a lot of layers, and that I will get to talking about that kind of thing, because the layers are another thing that you're going to want to consider. So yeah, I Googled books by African American authors, and I got a list a list called 13 books every African American person should have in their house. And I mean, these titles pretty clickbaity, but they have some really good resources. So they have Maya Angelou on there. They have The Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois. I never know if I'm trying to be too fancy by saying Du Bois, and I should know how to pronounce that. They also have the narrative. It is Du Bois. Excellent. I have been saying it correctly. They also have the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, on there, written by Frederick Douglass. So these are all historical texts that are a lot of them are personal narratives, personal essays, that kind of thing, that deal with the experience of African Americans in the past in America. But you can also look up some good contemporary stories that are the same. So there was a memoir released a couple years ago called Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward, which I heard amazing things about. Then there is Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote a book called Between the World and Me that also has been getting amazing reviews and coverage. And he apparently also has a memoir called The Beautiful Struggle that is about his experience with his father. Wants to use that book in his class. That's awesome. Oh, yeah? Oh, I thought you meant Between the World and Me. So he's read it then. I'll have to talk to him about it. Yes, I've heard amazing things. All of these books have gone on my to-be-read list, for certain. And I'm going to put the links to all of these things that I'm looking at and I'm telling you guys about in my newsletter on Monday, which you can sign up for pretty much anywhere you can find me. There's links on my Twitter and here in my bio. Ooh. So yeah, I'll be sharing all of these links with you guys if you are interested in any of the things I'm talking about. And then I also Googled, histories written by LGBTQ authors or LGBT authors, and I got a couple different lists for that. So, doing a quick Google will get you some stuff, but like I said, going into your library and maybe talking to their research person will get you even better results and help, I'm sure. And then also interviewing actual people is probably the best thing that you could do. If you don't have anyone in your immediate vicinity you can reach out to, like a friend or an acquaintance, then the women in the panel suggested maybe finding, if there's a university near you, maybe going to like a cultural studies department and talking to any of the students in there. They would probably, see, I know, Hanya, I know. Because those people would probably be more than willing to talk to you and answer some questions. Hi, Mimi! Welcome back. Hard word you see so often. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, universities, April. I don't know if there's one near you, but that might be a good alternative to Craigslist, because Lord only knows what's going to happen on Craigslist. Yes, which brings us to our third dimension of your character, which is attitudes. And this one comes last because you have to take all of the information that you've gotten from these first two dimensions and then make actual decisions, or make decisions about the actual person that you are creating, the actual person that you are writing about. So you have to have all of this as sort of a foundation before you can start to make choices for your character. Or you might get some really interesting information, actually. Yes. So you want to incorporate all of this research and then, like I said, make decisions about how your character does or does not think about these sorts of things. So you want to think about love and marriage and politics and economic status, both what is the economic status of your character and how do they feel about economic status, language, culture/cultural observance, education, etc. And so you want to consider the archetypal sort of big picture information that you've gotten about their culture and then decide whether or not your character sticks closely to that information or how they differ. And in the places that they differ, you want to think very carefully about why. Why do they disagree with their culture on this certain thing? And then you want to think about, do these attitudes that this character holds conform to, I guess I was sort of just talking about this, do they conform to the culture of their home, and is that culture the culture that they live in? So April, this is sort of what you were talking about how your character is an expat. So she has her Japanese culture that she's a part of, and you have to make decisions about where she fits in that. And then you also have to think about how she fits into America's culture with that Japanese cultural background and how those two things interact within your character and her experiences and her worldview. And so it gets pretty complicated, but it is so important to think about. And like I said, you want to be very clear. Major point of the character growth. Yeah, definitely. It would be, because, I mean, being in a place where the dominant culture is different from the one that you're used to, I mean, that's a whole story right there. That's the immigrant story, and that is layered and, yeah, exactly. So I think as long as you can find some really good resources, I don't know how you would find Japanese expats. There might be like a meetup or something where they might be gathering. Look up code switching 2 if you're not familiar with it. I am vaguely familiar with the concept of code switching. That has to do with language, right? I should look that up more. Oh, that's an interesting idea. An embassy, possibly. But yeah, so you're going to want to get a hold of some kind of authentic information there. You might be able to find some good books. So yeah, and then you might be thinking, this is a lot of research. Why would I do, when you're a member of two cultures, switching how, it's switching how you behave when you are a member of two cultures. Cool. April, you should look into code switching, which is what Martina just talked about, or just mentioned. How a person changes their behavior when they belong to two different cultures. Cool. Thanks. So yeah, you might be thinking, this is a lot of research to be doing for one character. Why would I do this if my book isn't about culture? And I will let you in on a little secret. Everything's about culture. Your character has a culture, and every character does. And so, it's in there whether or not you're acknowledging it, and it should absolutely be intentional. So you want to know all of this information. And also, if you think about it, when you're writing a character who is like you or is very closely related, has an experience that is very closely related to your own experience, you have all of this information already. You have all the knowledge about your own worldview. You have all of the knowledge about your own life experiences. You have access to your family, so you have access to your familial history. So if you're writing about someone who's like you, that information is all right there, and it seems like you're not thinking about it. It seems like, oh, it's just real easy. But in actuality, you've done all the research. The research is your life. So your characters who are different from you in any way deserve that same level of detail, that same level of attention, which is why you want to do thorough research to get to the most authentic version of this character that you can. And there's also a ton of, advice and stuff out there for writers who are writing characters who are different from themselves. There's an author, her name is Justine Larbalestier. I cannot pronounce her last name. It's really long, starts with an L. Larbalestier. I think she's Australian. But she says she actually recommends that white writers especially not write people of character into their books if they don't have a whole lot of experience interacting with people of color. And she cites a statistic that 75% of white people have an all-white social network, which does not surprise me at all. And I think that she's absolutely right. If you've never had a friend if you've never had a not white friend, then trying to write a not white character is going to be really difficult for you. But I think you can do a lot of the research, and it's going to be extra important for you to find a real person to talk to if you can. And this might be your answer to question number 2, am I the best person to write this story? So if you don't have a whole lot of experience with people of color, that might be your answer. And then one of the panelists on a different panel that I have more non-white friends than white, actually. Yes, exactly. So one of the panelists on another panel, is it different in writing fantasy? I don't think so, actually, because even if you're writing about, like, cultures and races that you're making up, I think they're still built off of the real world. And so, I mean, if you think about it, like, Game of Thrones is a fantasy, and it's built off of a world that looks an awful lot like medieval times, medieval culture in Europe specifically. So, I mean, that's still information that I'm sure George R.R. Martin researched and, you know, used. Like fire, they apparently speak Chinese, but yeah. Yeah, about that. So yeah, even if you're making up the culture, then it's still going to be based on things that are actually, you know, happening in the world on some level, at least. You're going to be influenced by things that you've seen and heard and read about, I think. I don't actually write fantasy. But like I said, like I imagine. Oh, Tolkien based dwarves off of Arabic people. Interesting. That is not a fact that I knew. But see, further evidence of my assumptions. So I think having a thorough and as non-biased as you possibly can understanding of other cultures will help you even in your fantasy writing. So yeah, good question though. That was a really good question. And I think someone actually asked that in the panel. So that might have been where my words of wisdom just came from. Yeah. Then anyway, so there's this other panel that I went to about how white writers can be better allies to writers of color. It's a lot of crap for the amount of whitewashing because it's irrelevant to the story. Yeah, I actually, when I was looking up this topic, I read a post that was talking about that, about how science fiction fantasy writers sometimes do that thing where they just change the color of the character's skin and ta-da, there's diversity in my story, which is not a real thing. That's the opposite of how you want to write these characters, which is exactly what we've been talking about, is how to not do that. So I think that all of this still would be helpful for people writing in other genres like that. Yes, this other panel that I went to that was about how white writers can be better allies to writers of color. One of the panelists was Tim, I can't pronounce his last name and I'm scared to try, and I should know because they said it a couple times, but they said it really fast. And I'm writing it down, I can't write down the pronunciation. So his last name is Seibles. Seibles. He was they were all really smart people and said a lot of great stuff, but he said, if you think that race does not affect your work, then you are lying to yourself, because it's in everything. And so that is something that if you think culture is not a part of your story, if you think race is not a part of your story, that's just not true. It's a part of every story because it's a part of every person. And so, yeah, exactly. That's what I was doing in my head. So if you think it's not in your work, you need to examine why you think it's not in your work, because there is definitely a vacuum there. There's something that you are not being mindful about. And so take a closer look because it's there. And also, an important thing to remember is that writing white characters is writing about race. Writing male characters is writing about gender. Writing straight characters is writing about sexuality. So there is no way out of it, and you need to be mindful of the choices that you're making. Why is this character white? Why did you choose that? How does being white affect this character? Why is this character a dude? How does being a dude affect this character? Those kinds of things. Martina said this in this original Periscope on this topic after this panel, that the idea that white or straight or male is the default is what makes everything else feel other and feel foreign and exotic and makes it, so it's important to remember that when, like I said, if you're writing about whiteness, you're still writing about race. And so it's not in your writing just because you're not conscious of it. And so you need to get conscious of it in order to make mindful choices and build fully fleshed out characters and tell better stories, really. The only thing this does is improve your writing. So yeah, that was a lot of stuff. And you guys asked some great questions. If there are any more out there or any more thoughts or ideas on anything I just said, I would be happy to chat some more. Silence. Should have a mic. I don't have a mic. I have a pen. Cool. And now my pen's on the floor. Good job, mate. Right on. Well, thank you for joining me this evening. If you joined late, then yeah, but is it mightier than the mic? If you joined late, my name is Megan, and I am a developmental editor and aspiring writing coach, and you can find me, which way? There it goes. I don't know if it's backwards for you guys. I hope not. But at Why Not Blog is my handle for pretty much every other social media account out there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then that's my website, www.thewhynotblog.com. My email is megan@thewhynotblog.com. You can find me at all those places, and I will respond to you promptly. Yeah, and also you can sign up for my newsletter in most of those places. Definitely on my website, definitely in my on my other social media channels, and like I said, I will be including all the links to the things that I talked about in next week's newsletter. So thanks for joining me, guys. I will talk at you later. Bye. No, what's happening? I promise I'm leaving. My phone's not working with me.